Feeling overwhelmed? Searching for someone who truly gets it? At J. Branch and Associates, we provide mental health support for BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and others facing unique challenges. We understand the weight of generational trauma, the struggles of identity, and the pressures of being a part of an underestimated and overlooked group. At J. Branch and Associates, therapy isn't a one-size-fits-all. We create a safe, culturally aware space where you can feel seen, heard, and understood. Finding a therapist who truly fits you matters, and that's exactly what we're here for. Our team of highly trained licensed therapists bring compassion, empathy, and real-world experience to help you on your journey to healing and growth. We're committed to helping you become the best version of yourself. Ready to take the next step? Visit us at www.drjbranch.com for more information, or call or text 404-436-2540 to schedule your free 15-minute consultation. You can also book your first session today. Thank you for choosing J. Branch and Associates, therapists of color providing exceptional care to BIPOC communities, quality service, exceptional care from authentic professionals.
Three parallels. Yeah. Three parallels. Yeah. Three parallels.
Three Parallel Podcast. Come take this walk with me.
Hello. Welcome back to the show, Three Parallels Podcast, with your host, Dr. Jason Branch. And today I have a phenomenal guest for you, Al. This person, she happens to be one of my favorite people, okay? Just know she's one of my favorite people. Why? Because she does everything. A mom. She's a mom. She's a counselor. She's a counselor educator. She's licensed. She's a healer. She's a support system. She is everything, a volunteer, a mentor, a mentee, air traffic control. She does everything. All right. And I am so excited to bless you all with her and what she brings, what that gift that she brings. She's connected. She's synergy. She's energy. She's the universe. She is all, right? So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Miss Briget Nunn. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, what an introduction, right? Like
Yes.
talk about pumping you up for the day.
I gotta get you right. I gotta get
know,
you ready.
I
'cause
know.
Sometimes we forget who we are.
And I'll tell you what, I'm going to introduce myself, but that is something you've always been amazing at. You always remind me who I am. It's always bringing me back to that center, that grounding. So I appreciate you. And all your gifts too, and how you poured into me over the years. And it's just phenomenal energy. And it's great to be here today. So I appreciate this.
Yes, indeed. And we're going to have a conversation. And listeners, y'all are in for a treat because we don't know what's going to happen. Just like when we meet, when we talk, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where we're going to go, but we always go somewhere that's so similar. It's so parallel, and it just happens organically. So now you all get a chance to witness what this life is like. So we're going to allow y'all to come into our conversation today.
Yeah.
So
For real.
let's dive in. I'm curious, your story, the show is called Three Parallels, and we're talking about who we were, who we are, who we're becoming, and we all have these three parallels. And I'm curious to know your story and whatever you want to share with us about Bridget.
Yeah. So, who I am right now, where I've been, which one do you want me to start with?
Whoever you want to start with.
Okay. I probably would start with, obviously you gave me a great introduction. I'm a mom, right? I'm a counselor. I work at a university. So that's who I am right now. I'm educating students in our profession, and that is one of my passions. Working with patients and helping them be the best version of themselves, also one of my passions. Being the best mom I can be, number one passion, of course, like that's it. Cultivating these humans into the people they want to be and need to be like amazing members of society. So those are my passions now. How I got to this place is always interesting, right? Because I didn't start off with all of these roles. I think I started off the way a lot of people do, which is I had no idea who I was, where I was going, what I was going to do. It was a lot of confusion and honestly, a lot of fear. I feel like when I look at who I was, decisions I made for so long were based on being afraid. of whatever that was, maybe the unknown, of being mostly uncomfortable.
Mm.
And something my friend Dr. Branch here has taught me over the years to embrace with such a vehement, energy, because that's where we do our most growth. So I think when I was younger, I don't know that I was growing at the same rate that I began to grow when I went into the fear and I embraced the uncomfortability. And I will say that probably over the last like 8 years, I've had like explosive growth, which is interesting because I'm 48. So you think 40 to 48, it's not usually the time you're thinking of that growth. Like in lifespan, you think of like, oh, in your 20s and these are the times where you're growing and stretching. And I think during that time, I was proud to be a mom at 25, and that was like the role. But I had a lot of complacency in my life for a
Mm.
lot of years. So when I started to go into the uncomfortable space, that's when everything started to shift and change. And I started to meet all sorts of different people that came into my sphere,
Mhm.
yourself included, right?
Yes,
So,
indeed.
and so I think that a lot of where I started was based on being scared. And
Mm,
then, trying to unravel where the scared came from, right? And
mm,
that's been the journey too. Like where did the fear come into play and why did it take such root in me rather, and I just couldn't move forward. So, my exploration is about understanding, the root ball of it all. And,
mhm,
we go back, right? We go back childhood, all of it, and you start to really figure it out. I think that the minute I went back to school, the minute I
mm,
decided that I was going to answer a higher calling in my spirit and who I was, that I wasn't going to be afraid of it. It was going to be hard and messy and challenging. And I had 4 kids and babies, and it was wildly insane. And looking back on it, there's no way anybody could do that. They couldn't go back and get all these degrees and, go do clinical rotations but I did it. I did it
mhm,
because every time my brain wanted to default to the you can't, because of all these core beliefs about self based on fear, I just said, hell no, hell no. And I just pushing and pushing and pushing. And then doors opened, right?
mm,
And doors opened, but doors opened to opportunity, but the doors inside my spirit and mind opened. And that was more profound than the opportunities that came because of it, right?
Ooh, I told y'all. I told y'all. Listen, it ain't even 10 minutes. Ah, I tried to tell y'all. Okay, so what
Yeah.
ooh, this is so good. This is so good. I'm so excited. So
Okay.
one of the biggest things that popped up that we gotta talk about is
Yeah.
fear, and we
Yeah.
all have it. And sometimes fear can be bigger for us than the facts.
Oh,
Sometimes fear is bigger than the facts. So I
all
would love
day.
for you to share what was that fear? What were those fears that you had early on, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So like looking back, my biggest fear was that I wasn't enough, right? I wasn't enough. And because I wasn't enough, I couldn't do any of it. There was just no way. I couldn't tackle that task. There was no way for me to accomplish that goal because I wasn't enough. And that came from, early childhood, some trauma, all sorts of things that happened, in growing up. And I didn't really understand how it laid this groundwork of this really what I call the lie, the big lie.
Mm,
It's
mm,
the big lie that we all believe at some point, and it takes root in us. And it's the governing agency for every decision I would make from that point on. I was operating from the big lie, And so when I could realize that the lie was I was always enough, none of that shit had anything to do with me,
come on.
right?
Come on with it. Come on with
It
it.
had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with me. I was enough. I was enough the way I was. And if I could just challenge that every time that belief came in. So it started to, for me, try to surround myself with people, places, and things that would edify the belief that I always was enough. Right.
Mm,
So changing my environment. If there was something that was toxic for me, it was time to let it go,
mm.
even if that was something as big as a marriage.
Whoa,
Yeah.
let's dive in. We're here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. So like I was married to someone I met when I was 22 years old. I had 4 kids with him. We created a life, but it was not a healthy marriage. And I just kept believing the lie that I wasn't enough. And so all the decisions I made were based on the big lie, right?
Mm,
So if I could do more in the marriage, I'd be enough. If
mm,
I could do this, if I could show him that. And it had nothing to do with me. There was nothing I was ever going to do, ever going to bring, ever going to fix that was going to make it okay. Because the problem wasn't within me.
mm.
It wasn't within me. My lie, my big lie was I wasn't enough. I don't know what his big lie was or is. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But for whatever his was that was governing his actions, I know what my contribution was. And it was that I was just constantly trying to fix it. I was fixing it. And then I was pouring myself into all these other things, but I wasn't really engaging with myself. And I wasn't looking at what was actually happening in front of me. So
Yeah.
once
Wow.
I decided no more, and it opened something up because if I could cut that out, then I could see clearer what I did want. I could see
Mm,
clearer who I needed to be, who I always was, what I was suppressing to make myself small for somebody else.
mhm.
No more. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that changed everything for me. And there was a lot of those decisions. It was ending a marriage. It was going back to school. It was the fear of people judging me because of course I don't feel enough, right? So they're going to judge me if this marriage ends. I'm a failure now, right?
Mhm.
Like I didn't fix it.
Yeah.
Wasn't my job to fix it. I showed up. I showed up. Wasn't my job if somebody else couldn't, right? And it's not to bash him either because, I don't want to, do that, but I want to be honest about my story,
Absolutely.
and I think like him and I have become friends and we co-parent together great, but it was a journey. It
Yeah.
was a journey to get there.
Yeah.
And a lot of this had to happen where I had to realize that I had to be bold. And a
Mm.
good friend of mine has told me that quite a few times over the years
I'm glad to
because
hear it.
yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
because
sorry.
you yourself are bold, right? So you just by being who you are, led by example without even having to say anything. Cause like
Mm,
I remember when I met you, I was on the precipice of all these big changes. I was ending this and starting this. And I was uncomfortable as all heck in my skin, right? Like I was like coming out of my skin. And you didn't even need to say anything to me because when I met you and saw you, I was like, yeah, that's what I want.
So you got to tell the story. What
Yeah.
what was it? What was
Okay, okay. I love this story. We were at a counseling conference, and I was helping to run this conference. It was a lot of people, a lot of counselors, a lot of people in our profession, the helping profession. Let me just preface it by saying that, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
so we make an assumption that in this profession, everyone's got the heart of gold and they have the empathy and compassion, because of course that's what we should have, right? At this particular conference, people were very disgruntled. They were having a lot of emotional reactions, and it was all kind of piling on to me. And I was doing what I do. This parallels into what we just talked about, fixing things, right?
Yes.
The fixer
Yes.
trying to make everything nice and make everybody happy. And I was exhausting myself to like no end. And I just like, just felt so depleted. And I'm looking behind the desk, the front desk where people are checking in, and I see this guy, this guy with his wingtip shoes on, looking all fly and sharp, right? And he's just sitting there and he's the calmest energy I think I ever like encountered in my life. And all this shit is swirling around him. And I'm like sweating, like from every part of my body. I'm like, my cheeks are red. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I just look over and that's what I see. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want right there. And the minute I saw that and like engaged with you for a second, the next thing you know, I went off to the corner, did a couple of yoga moves, got myself in some Zen mode because I thought that was the
Yes.
reminder of, well, what am I doing? I'm fixing all these problems and everybody's yelling at me and I'm grinding myself into the ground because I'm making myself small again. Here it is again.
Yes.
And just meeting you, was the reminder. And then from there, we were just like hey, we're going to be friends. This is
Yeah,
going to be,
that's it. We're
that was
done.
it.
We're done
That
here.
was it.
I love the story, and it never gets old. Story never gets old because I wasn't even aware of my energy and the vibe I was putting out. I was just being authentically me,
I
and
know.
I had my boundaries up where it was chaos. It was so much
It
chaos,
was
and I didn't want any parts of it. Although I'm working too, I didn't want any parts
exactly.
of it because it was such a negative, unhealthy, toxic energy that we were surrounded by. And I had the same sentiments you do. This is the helping profession, right? This is a conference that's dedicated for helping professionals to get better at being helping professionals. And they, at the time, were the worst. They were the worst. And I noticed it. I noticed it. And when I recognized it, because we're so similar, parallel
Yeah.
universe, I was doing the same thing you were doing before before you got there. So I already had experienced it. And it didn't take me long to recognize, "Oh, this
Yeah.
ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm gonna have a seat." That's what I did. I sat
I
down,
I saw
literally,
you. I saw
literally.
I saw you. You were like so relaxed and
'Cause
just
this ain't
like,
had it had nothing to do with me,
yeah.
and that was and I'm glad, I love this story because it's
Yeah.
so connecting. I'm so glad that my energy and my place of peace in the middle of chaos rubbed off on you because you were paying attention. And there was a lot of people around us that was not paying attention because they were more concerned about what they need and what they wanted, and it
Yeah.
didn't matter about anybody else, although everybody here is a helping professional in some capacity.
I know.
It was a contradiction, and we both struggled in it.
We did. There was incongruence in it, and we don't like incongruence.
Not at all. When you healthy, listeners, this is for the
Yeah.
healthy listeners. This
Yeah.
is also for the unhealthy listeners.
Yeah.
When you are when you are healthy, you're consistent, you're congruent, your head aligns with your heart, what you say aligns with what you do. When you're inconsistent, it's the complete opposite for both.
Right.
So, we both were healthy enough to see, to know, to be aware, to shift, to change. Now, the
Yes.
environment did not change.
Nope.
We
Let's be clear about that. We need to be crystal clear about that. It only got worse.
True
We're gonna be
story.
honest.
True story. True story. So, I'm curious, your
Yeah.
your journey of how did you even because again, there's a lot of people there, and we can stay here for a moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people there, but you saw in the middle of chaos, I was sitting, but there was other people that walked past that didn't care. They tripping over me, trying to get to the next thing.
They
But
were.
you noticed it and you checked you and
Yeah,
you stepped away. Like
I
that's
did.
boundaries at its finest. How did you develop this sense of awareness to even recognize it and do something about it?
Yeah, so that's a good question because you and I have had this conversation before a few times about, this empathic kind of quality that we've always kind of had, but couldn't put our finger on it or had a name for, or how we were dialed in with what was happening around us.
Yeah.
Whether it was unhealthy, healthy, whatever, we were observant and could see it. And I only have a clearer vantage point now that out of my four kids, they all have levels of empathy, but there's one in particular, my one guy, Caden, who's like, woof, I mean, he is dialed in, right? And now that I see it, like as such a young child, as he's been growing up, it's so interesting because that's always what it was for me. It's just no one could speak to that when I was younger. Like I didn't know what that was. I felt different sometimes. I feel everything so strongly. So I think in that moment, I just felt your presence and energy. And my spirit screamed out for it because I did not like the feeling that was going on around me. And so, when you don't like something, when something feels uncomfortable, you look for anything else that can be the counter to that, right?
Wow.
And it
Wow.
just so happened that you were literally right there in this like, and you're not wrong. People were literally behind you, tripping over you. They didn't, and you weren't moving, which I loved. You just
Yeah.
like, your
Yeah.
foot was like stretched out. I was like, oh, I remember it exactly because to me, it was just, yeah, no, that's what we should be doing right now. I'm not
Mm,
grinding myself into the ground
yeah.
for anybody right now. Why?
Yeah.
But that's the learned, conditioned response from, I think, our younger years when we try to manage our family or there's stuff swirling around us. We think that it's our job to grind ourselves into the ground to appease or make happy. And I think I had reached a point at that point in my life where I was so tired of doing it. There
Mm,
was no more room for it anymore. Even if I wanted to keep doing it and just, for the rest of my life, it was done. Like
yeah.
I couldn't. It was like
Yeah.
explosive at that point. It was like a rejection of all of that. So
Mm,
once I had the awareness, then it was an immediate rejection. And then I sought out something that would give me grounding. And you were there, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do yoga. That's right. You sit and relax. I'm going to do yoga and we're going to chill out. Like, this is
yeah.
not going to happen. And I'll go address this crap in a hot second, but I'm not doing it at this moment when I got people screaming at me.
Yeah.
Nothing was a life crisis in that moment. And
Mm,
everyone was around us acting like it was.
yes. So this is
Yeah.
so good. I
Yeah.
don't know how we got here. This is where we're gonna be right now. Again, listen, I told you I don't know what's gonna happen. So I'm curious, like,
Yeah.
for I feel that experience is so similar to our society as a whole.
Mm.
Where when you're not aware, you just do the rules that you were taught and told from childhood all the way to adulthood, and you live by those rules because it's law to you. Just like you were able to recognize, actually, the big lie, I'm not enough. That is a lie because I am enough. How do I know? I have evidence.
Yeah.
So how have you been able to navigate, moving away from this idea of who you were to
Yeah.
embracing who you actually are in this environment? And that was just at a conference. I'm talking
Right.
about in our society as a whole. You do the same thing.
Yeah.
How?
Well, like going to what you said, the rule, right? Like I've said that it's called our rules of engagement. And where do they come from, right? So once I started to realize I'd created all these rules of engagement based on the big lie, I was
Mm,
like, "Oh, crap. None of them are actually me. I
hmm.
don't know who I am. I
Wow.
don't actually know who I am without the big lie," right? Because the big lie.
Whoa. We
Yeah.
go whoa, we going. Let's get it, Bridget. Yo, I'm sorry. I get so excited. Y'all gotta excuse me. I get so excited because me and Bridget, we do this all the time, but
Yeah.
we have decided to invite you all in. So now y'all are getting this giddiness, and I love being giddy. This giddiness of self-discovery and self-awareness, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what Bridget's talking about. I'm sorry. Continue. Go ahead.
No, no, I love it. I love it. I'm right there with you. I like how excited we get and we're firing on all cylinders and feeding off one another. But I didn't know who I was. And the big lie was the idea of self. So then the rules of engagement came from that. And so everything was, well, it has to be like this and look like this. And all of a sudden, when I realized that the lie wasn't true, then none of the rules would actually apply anymore.
Mm,
So now, what was this gonna look like?
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't know, and that was scary, and you were with me through some of that where I'm like, "I don't
Mhm.
know, what do I do?" And you're like, "I'm not gonna tell you what to do. You tell me."
Absolutely.
Yeah, remember?
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
tell me what you're worth. What are you worth? You decide that. And when that was actually one of the big we'll just go there for a second because that was a poignant moment for me because one of the rules were based on the big lie, if I'm not enough, the rule is, I don't know what to ask for. What should I be paid for this? And your response to me was, how much are you worth? And I had no answer because how could I know that if I believed the big lie and all the rules that came from it? So I had to reject that and decide, oh, okay, I got to make a new rule. I
Yes.
decide what I'm worth.
Yes.
Me,
Yes.
I get to decide.
Yes.
I'm in control here. I'm determining my worth, my essence, who I want to be. And that was huge. That was one of like, and it made me super uncomfortable. You remember that conversation. I'm like, "What? You're not going to tell me. Oh, I
Yeah.
came to you because I want you to tell me what to do."
Oh,
And you're
yeah.
like,
I remember. I remember. I thought we were gonna put some boxing gloves on for a minute because you finna tell me,
well,
and I
because
refuse.
you weren't gonna play into the same patterns of what was happening in my life before that, which is I'm gonna go and tell you, oh, tell me what to do, and then I'll just do it. And it was like, no, claim it. Claim it
Mhm.
right now, Bridget. Claim it,
Mhm.
And that made me uncomfortable because I'd never been asked to do that and never felt comfortable doing it because I was always afraid. I was afraid to claim it. What would that mean? That what I, it would mean something bigger than I was even willing to look at. And so you pushed me without pushing me, you pushed me, right? Just by saying no. Just
But just healthy boundaries. That's all. Just
healthy
healthy
boundaries, healthy
boundaries.
boundaries. I'm not going to give you the answer. And it was so perfect too, because didn't that just equate to everything I was doing with my patients? Because all they want to do is come in a session and be like, "Well, just tell me what to do. How do I fix it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not the gig here. That's not what we're doing, right? It's not the gig. No." And it's the congruence again, right? Like if I'm
Yeah,
going to do that and tell someone else they need to challenge themselves in an uncomfortable space, damn if I shouldn't be doing the same thing.
absolutely.
So I learned so much from these little nuggets, and you put that in my corner, and it really did start the snowball effect of me claiming my worth and knowing my value, and
Mm,
really just all of a sudden changing the rules now. No matter
absolutely.
what the noise is around me, society, whatever anybody told me when I was younger, it didn't matter. I was going to
Mhm.
create new rules, and those rules were based on who I was now. And then
Yes.
I get to decide who she is, right? Without all the other stuff. So,
Powerful.
yeah.
Powerful. Powerful.
Yeah.
So next piece, we finna go in the basement. You
Okay.
already know. We finna go in the basement. And for the new listeners, because there's some new listeners, when we go to the
Okay.
basement, that means we finna go to the heart. We finna go
Yeah.
in feelings. And a lot of times we don't spend time in the basement. That's why it's so horrible. It's not livable. The attic is livable. The attic is our head, our mind. We
Mhm.
we live there. It's a nice
Yeah.
condo. It's a loft. You got Picasso's, Basquiat's, you got a refrigerator,
Nice.
wine, you got
Thank
all that. It's beautiful.
you.
King size, like California king. Like it's really nice
Oh,
in the
all
attic.
right. All
But the
right.
basement, you can't even stand down there. That's why it's important for us to go, because our basement needs to be as pristine as our attic.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
analogy, as y'all know, I love them. I look at all of us as like an onion. There's a core to all of us, and that core is our authentic self. But that authenticity is covered by layers upon layers upon layers of exactly what you share: people, places, and things, perspective, society, rules, laws, the whole nine. So I'm curious if you know the origin of the big lie. Who, what, when, where told you that you weren't enough? Because I'm sure it didn't just come from you. Like you just come out the womb, hey, I'm not enough, y'all. I'm sure I'm sure it didn't happen that way. So
No.
if you know, or if you can recall, where did it come from? And what you shared, I connect the dots to legacy,
Yeah.
where I continue to believe the lie, because it's perpetuated from wherever it started. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love if you could dive into that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've been, working on that for a long time. The origins, right, the root
Mhm,
of it all. I think for me, it starts with, my mom was a young single mom. She wasn't married, and my father, my biological father, didn't want to be in the picture. So, growing up, we didn't have a lot. I mean, I slept on a floor for a while. My mom lived on a yogurt a day, so it was rough beginnings with a lot of, food insecurity and all sorts of things. She was a hard worker and a great mom, but there was this absence of any type of, like obviously father figure, but an absence too of like, the security of knowing that we had enough money or these things. She worked hard, she actually was on welfare for 2 years, but then made a point to get herself off of it. And so, I would say for the most part, my childhood was okay. It was good. Like I had a loving mom, I had grandparents who loved me, but there was this absence, right, with not having a dad and being aware of that. You're around other kids who have a mom and a dad, and you don't have one. And there isn't a whole lot to be said to a child, like to explain why. He just didn't want to be there, just wasn't what he wanted. So I think that some of the origin is rooted in that, right? This idea that the person that's your father, he just chose not to be in your life. It wasn't
mhm.
like he passed away or anything like that. It was a choice. So if someone chooses not to want to be there for you, what does that say about you?
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I think that was a big chunk of it. My mom, had different like boyfriends when I was younger, and I never thought any of them were really nice. I always felt like, so I had this like interesting skew on men actually, which was also part of like this whole. And I remember my mom ended up getting married when I was 5 to my stepfather. And
Mhm.
I call him dad. He's the only dad I've ever known. I love him. We had some tough times too when I was younger because he didn't quite know how to parent. But the first time he took my mother on a date, He said he came to pick her up and I was 4.5, 5 years old. And he said, I put my hand on my hip and I said, we don't need a man. Boom,
Whoa, whoa.
boom. Yeah. He was like, all right.
Wow.
But
Wow.
you see, the groundwork is laid at this point where I'm learning very early on. It's like me and her against the world.
Mm,
Men are not reliable, and then I have this absent, father. And then he steps in and he, does like the best job he can, a good job. They have a couple more kids. Those are my siblings, seemingly a fine growing up. But then I meet my father again at 10 years old, my biological father. He comes back around and my mother allows the meeting.
mm,
She was on the fence about it, allows the meeting. I don't really remember it. This is what I'm told. It went well. There was no issues. He made a plan to come pick me back up and then did not.
mm,
So, from my understanding at 10 years old, now we have this space, right? Where like I'm already feeling like I don't have my biological dad. My stepdad is great in a million ways, but I can see that it's not that it's different that he loves my siblings more. It's not that, but they get to bond differently because he had them since they were little, right? And
mhm.
I'm growing up seeing this, and there's this feeling, and then it happens again. It's the like, I'm not going to show up. So, what does that say about you?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's really what I've learned some of the groundwork is, interestingly enough, I have a relationship with my biological father now. I met him again at 28 on my terms. Of course, he apologized, made my peace with it all. I'm actually grateful in a lot of ways for the way things turned out. So it's not me, pointing blame at anyone, but I can definitely see where that internalized in me. And then that became kind of what it was going forward. Like if I had a bad relationship, a boyfriend or something like that, it was further clarification that I wasn't good enough.
Mm,
Right. Because if the
mm.
relationship didn't go well, there it is again. There's
Wow.
another person not showing up for you. And it was always really rooted around men, if I'm being honest, like because
Mm,
I had great relationships with females,
yeah.
like my aunts and my mom and my sisters. But it was this whole idea that I wasn't going to have that,
Yeah.
And so that I think was that's where my big lie took root. And
Mm,
then the thing about these big lies, they're so interesting. It can be a big trauma, a little trauma, it doesn't really matter. But once it takes root, you look for evidence around you that fills the lie.
ooh, Bridget. Woo, woo, keep
You know?
going.
Yeah. So even if I'm in a relationship, that's just a relationship that may or may not work. I'm finding evidence that that relationship is feeding the lie that I'm not enough. That's all I was doing all the time, right? And so it was frustrating to me because then even after my divorce, if I would go on, I dated, some people and those relationships ended up being like unhealthy. And I'm like, how the heck? How the heck again? Like, I'm pushing past this. I've grown, I've stretched, I've done the work. Why am I here again? And it's like, because you're still believing the big lie that you're not enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, and there's so many people that's listening now that can connect exactly to what you're sharing.
Yeah.
Uh, So the work, like how did you overcome this? What did you do to figure this out and become more self-aware and shift and change? What was the method?
Well, I think part of it I mean, I know I'm biased, but you gotta go to therapy. You gotta go. You gotta go.
I think that makes two of us. We're both
Yeah,
biased.
yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, you've gotta do the same work you want anyone sitting in your office to do. You just have to. Like, please, for
Yes.
all you counselors who are out there, please know that the difference between being good and excellent is because the excellent clinicians are the ones who are actually doing the same shit that their patients are. So if you're not doing it, get out there and do it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Shameless plug.
Yeah,
Shameless
I know.
plug.
I gotta. So there was that. I had to sit with a professional and not think that I had all the answers because I was a professional or I was training to be one or I thought I had insight. So I'd gone to therapy over the years, but I think that I'd gone to therapy and I had said I've gone to therapy. I worked on my stuff, but I don't think I really worked on my stuff. I
What
think
do you
it
mean by that?
well, I think like I went through it and said what I thought sometimes that they wanted to hear. I I also don't think I was 100% authentic.
Mm.
And so without being 100% authentic about my experiences, I don't really think that I could fully heal or work from them. So when I got real about it, and I'm just going to full disclosure, I had therapy today with my therapist like a couple of hours ago. And I was after the session, I was like, oh crap, like I, I brought something up that I'd never brought up to anyone before. And here we go again. Right.
Mm.
And afterwards, I was feeling like, oh, why did I do that? And then I'm like, no, this is good. Right. So this is
Good.
tying into everything here. Still a work in progress, still doing all of that stuff. I think that once I got real about being vulnerable and being raw and showing it, it changed everything, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't just doing that in therapy. You and I have a friendship. If I feel a strong connection with someone and I know that they're safe, because my love language, like for anybody, friendship is like I need to feel safe, right?
Mm.
So if I'm safe, I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna be real. And the minute I started like getting real with myself, then I was getting real with everyone else, and the healing started. And I
Mm.
didn't have to believe the lie anymore, because all of a sudden I was seeing how other people were looking at me through their lens too.
Mm.
And it was like, okay. And I was like, oh, I am enough. Actually, I might be more than enough,
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Could
Yeah.
you
Right.
could you speak on it? Because I feel like, and I really appreciate you so much for sharing your
Yeah.
truth, your journey, your story, your
Yeah.
experiences. And it's like you went from one mindset, one belief, one identity to a
Yeah.
totally different one that not only, took away, like it depleted this belief or idea that I'm not. And you had the confidence, not only am I enough, I'm way better than what I thought I was.
Yeah.
How did that transition happen? And this, it sounds like an awakening kind of
Yeah.
happened for you,
Yeah.
and that feeling that came with it. I would love to hear more about that.
That's a great way to put it, awakening. I feel like that's what it was. It was an awakening, I, I think it just was this moment, when it was like, you and I have talked about this before with like people in our lives when we want to bring them where we are,
Yes,
and
indeed.
they won't come. They
Yes,
won't
indeed.
come. Ugh. But it's not
Yes,
our
indeed.
job to bring them, right? So I think I was standing at the like, at the threshold of a doorway for a long time. And I was there. And everyone's like, come on in, come on in.
Mhm,
And I was like, no,
mhm,
I'm too scared. I'm too scared. I can't walk through the door. Right. And one day I just felt like something was so powerful in me. I was so tired of being cold and scared on the outside of this door while everybody else was warm and feeling good inside. And I just didn't want to feel that way anymore. I wanted to step over the threshold and walk in. I wanted to be brave. And I said to myself, I remember like the moment, it was like, the moment I decided to even go back to school. That was one of the moments. I'm standing there, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Oh, I'm not going to do it. It's like, what do I do? And then it was like, what's the worst that happens? What's the worst, Bridget? Your fear, whatever it is, what's the worst that happens? You fail? All right. What does that mean? What does it mean? You know, the failure was part of the rule of engagement too, right? Don't forget. And it was based on the big lie that you're not enough. So I was like, what's the worst? There really wasn't a worst. I mean, so what? What was going to happen? I was going to walk through that door and go back to class. So what? Do it. And I did. That was the first step. And then there were other steps like with my marriage. I'm there. I gotta end this. No, I can't. I have 4 kids. How am I gonna support? Like it was all the fear. The fear was
mhm,
there, right? And it was based on I'm not enough, so I can't. And I was standing in that doorway. And then just one day I remember looking at my ex-husband, and he just said something. It was like so negative, and it was just I didn't want to hear it anymore.
mm,
I wanted to walk through the door and I wanted to leave that part behind. I was done. I wanted to be brave. So all of a sudden, I started to notice when I got brave, and this is how it changes. So everybody that's listening, hear this. Hear this.
Get your notebooks out, baby. Get your
When
notes.
when you get brave, and it's hard to get there. So I respect everybody that's still stuck on the threshold, because we all have those moments and I'll continue to have them. We all will, and that's all right. But when you get brave and you get a taste of what's on the other side, it's so hard to go back to the doorstep.
Ooh.
You can't, right?
So you gotta give us an example. We want to see it. We want to hear it. We want to feel it. What was one of those moments where you remember where you were and then who you became and knowing that I can never be that person again?
Um, okay. Oh, this is a good one. That's a good question. I'll say this. Okay, you'll appreciate this because this is some of stuff we talked about years ago. I was working at the university, and I remember being on the doorstep of trying to run the program the way everyone else had done it, and I was trying to do what was expected of me, the rules, right? And I remember talking to you about it, and it just didn't feel good. I didn't know. It just felt, I felt like an imposter. I don't know. It just felt, and I knew I wanted to do something different, but I was on the doorstep and I couldn't walk through because I was afraid. You challenged me. What's the fear? Well, the fear is like I'm not going to be respected. What do I know? I only have a master's degree. I'm the only one in the room that doesn't have a PhD. So who am I? And you're like, well, who are you, right? And I remember standing there on that doorstep thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And I was like, what's the worst? What's the worst that happens? So I walked through it. When I walked through it, I started to do things that I felt were important in terms of the program. It didn't mean I didn't value input from colleagues and my predecessors, but I was going to do it my way, and I was going to be me, and I was going to teach the classes my way too. So if that meant that I cussed once in a while, or I got down and dirty and really gave them the business because I wanted to highlight a clinical skill because I wanted to make them excellent, then I was going to do it like that. And if I was going to bring in dynamic speakers like you and have them talk to us, I was going to do it like that. And that, once I did it, I can't go back now. I could never
Mm.
go back and be that person who wants to be small in a box again, and be smaller for how anybody else wants it. So that was one of the moments. And it's great. I had orientation yesterday and I loved being up there and doing it my way, being honest with the students and authentic and inspiring them, because I don't want to rule with like this iron fist mentality of like, show up and refer to me as this and do this. I want to inspire them to be excellent, because when they're excellent, they're changing people's lives. And the more lives you change, the better we are as human race, and we treat ourselves nicer. It is in a better place to be. So screw it. That was the moment for me. And that's one of probably 1,000 moments where I like walked through on the other side and was like, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent example. And it's definitely leading us right to where we're going organically.
Okay.
Okay. This is so good, so powerful. And listeners, please know the situation you're in, where you currently are, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing. It's not always going to remain the same. And this is what I'm hearing. It changes. We change. Nothing stays the same. So I'm curious, your journey as a student, you were a non-traditional student, lived life a certain way and decided, I'm going to take care of me, go to school. How was that experience for you in the world of academia? First being
Mm,
a student and navigating academia as a student who's
yeah.
non-traditional, who knows themselves, and then finishing that experience and transitioning to become a professor and working in academia. How was that experience and transition for you?
Yeah. I remember my first class, sitting down and being really unsure if I'd made the right decision and what am I doing here, Because, of course, non-traditional student, I was older than a lot of the other students at that point. And, what is this?
Mm.
But I had a great professor, who I really, a few of them, but one in particular who I really, resonated with. She was similar to my age, so that meant something, but she saw something in me, like, innately right away, and she was like, kind of, and this is so important because I feel like this is what I do now. So it's like you pay things forward, right? This is how it goes. She saw something in me, and I felt like always kind of had me like this, talking to me. Do you want to be part of New Jersey Counseling Association? You want to do this? You want to do that? Bringing me into the fold in the loop because she knew I had something to contribute. And I think it was the first time in God, I don't know how long, that somebody looked at me and saw that I had something to contribute.
Wow.
And honestly, it just makes me tear up a little bit because I hadn't thought about that in years now, but it was powerful. And I remember thinking at the time, this is something else. I know that if I ever get the opportunity, and I knew watching her and being in that class, there was some way I wanted to be in the education component of this. And I didn't know how that was going to work out. But God and the universe had other plans, I mean, like it landed in my lap, literally, as and and when I got to have the opportunity to run the program and teach for the program, I feel like I do it from such a humanistic level, which was given to me. And it was so important. And so the woman I just hired to be my new practicum coordinator, she was a student at the university where I was that I taught a class for a few like years later. And then she worked for me as a student volunteer for NJCA. And now here she is fully licensed. I gave her a letter of recommendation to be at the place that I was at one point. She's working there, running things over there, being asked to be the director over there. I I had orientation with her. It's her first orientation last night, and she's standing there, and we were talking to the students about, not just networking from like a business, like a transactional space, but getting connected with faculty, with each other. It's a small community, and you don't know what opportunities are going to come up for you. And I highlighted her journey, and she was like paying me accolades because I brought her into this space. And all of a sudden, I'm looking around at the people who are at this orientation, and I brought them all in. And I thought, yes, 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 full circle,
Yeah,
as my wonderful Oprah would say, full circle moment, right? But
that's
but
beautiful.
really, it was a beautiful thing. So for me, it was powerful to have someone pour into me, and I just want to pour into others now. So that's kind of how I am in academia. I feel like that's the model. You just keep moving it, moving it, moving it.
Yeah, that's powerful. That is so powerful. And I'm sure many of the listeners would love to have you as a professor, as an administrator, as a mentor, um, because just sharing that story and your lived experience speaks volumes to what is available. And a lot of times we don't have access to those experiences. And for you to feel seen, heard, understood, valued, respected, cherished by this particular professor who didn't have to do that, but
Yeah.
she did. And with this show, we don't mind giving flowers. So if you want to shout that professor out, you're more than welcome
Ah,
to. I got an idea who it might be.
Dr. Sharita Hughes.
That's what I'm talking about. Dr. Hughes will also be on the show.
Woo, woo. I
So
love
full
her.
circle. Yes, Dr.
Full circle.
Hughes is the truth.
She is the truth. And if it wasn't for her though, you and I wouldn't have met either, because that's part of how she brought me into NJCA. So like when you look at what becomes when you're willing to walk through that threshold, when you're willing to go there, there's so much that unfolds and keeps unfolding though. That's the wild thing. Like
Yes.
here we are today, right? I
Yes,
mean,
absolutely.
it's we just keep doing it.
Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going.
So as all many of you know, within the counseling profession, it's very small. Like 3 degrees, 3, 4 degrees of separation. So anybody
Yeah.
you want to connect with, meet, know, you're only 3 to 4 people removed from connecting with anybody in the profession.
Yeah.
And what I love about this profession, because it's small, it's big, but it's small, is you are finding your crew, your village, your community as you grow and as you go. And there's some communities you may step in, step out, you grow out of, you grow into, you
Mm,
transition, you transform. It's all a part of your journey. And what
yeah.
Bridget is sharing is her journey. And I need you all to pay attention to the steps that it took. And she's sharing both sides, the personal and the professional, because we're navigating both worlds at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is beautiful.
I
This
know.
is beautiful.
Well, also too, like I know we were talking, some of the other, professors in the program sometimes will say like, I know people want to keep a lid on our personal stuff, right? Because there's got to be this line, and I told you, I did that one thing a few years ago where we were talking about we make assumptions, right?
Yes.
Assumptions about people, right? And I
Mhm,
went into class and I said, well, tell me what your assumptions are about me.
mhm.
And I said, and be real and authentic. And they gave me all their assumptions. And then I just gave them the truth and gave them my raw, honest truth about some of my experiences in life. And, some of their jaws were like, what? Like, and so, other people might say, well, why are you doing that? Why are you pouring yourself out? I mean, if one of my patients heard this, they'd know some of my story. My feeling is there's no point in any of this if we can't be honest. I think through our honesty and vulnerability, that's how everyone learns and grows. That is the
Mhm.
truth. I'd rather my students glean more because I have the ability to say, I'm human too. I'm
Ah.
human too. Right?
Oh, you dropping gems. You just making my heart smile like I talk about it, but it's like, I need people to know I'm not the only person talking like this. I'm not the only
Yeah,
person living like this. I'm not the only person teaching or supervising or doing
yeah,
therapy in this way. And it's humanistic. We're humans first. I don't care your position, title, rank, it doesn't matter. We're
right.
humans first. And we all have a story. We all have experience. We all have a journey. We all have three parallels: who we were, who we are, who we're becoming.
Oh,
So next next phase of
okay.
our journey on this
Mm,
show,
all right.
I got some questions. I got some questions for you. Like, I have
Okay.
plenty of questions anyway, but these questions are more to hear more about your journey and story and to connect with listeners. So,
Okay.
first question, and you shared a lot, but what's one of those biggest moments where you learned this thing about yourself? Like, out of from little Bridget, we don't need no man, all the way to this Bridget. I'll wait till this
Uh-huh.
current Bridget. Oh, F you, I'm human. What's something you learned about yourself through this journey?
Oh, that's a good one. So many things. Probably the most powerful thing that I've learned is that I am I am capable. I am more capable than I ever knew that I was. Um, and it doesn't matter what it is. I am capable. I have what I need to do any of it. I
Mm,
just have to be willing to say yes and go. That I was my biggest barrier. No one else. Not any trauma, not my dad leaving. Those are my story. That's my story, right? That's fine. This is my story, my narrative. That's great. That wasn't the block. I was the block. It was always me. So I've learned I'm capable and I don't need to block myself off. I just have to say yes and go.
ooh, dropping gems, y'all. Again, get your notebook. All right, go get that notebook. Write this stuff down. All right, next question.
Yeah.
What have you learned about people?
Oh. Um well, they're scared
Mhm,
mostly. They're so scared, I think. I think I've learned that most everyone that I come in contact with, whether it's professionally or personally, is operating under fear.
mm,
And that actually is something that has struck me over and over again over these last several years. And it actually makes me really sad, to be honest. And it's not sad in a way of like, oh, we're doomed. It's not that. It's
mhm,
just so sad that that's how we internalize everything,
mhm,
that we live in this fear based state, and that a lot of people will not get out of it. And a lot of
mhm.
people will. A lot of people will.
Uh-huh.
Not everybody's going to walk through the threshold or go explore or seek or be introspective. Some of them are just going to stay in the fear. So I think that's what I've learned most about people. However, the caveat to that is that they're damn resilient.
Good. Oh, that's good. That
Yeah.
is so good.
So there's the part where like, yeah, we're all operating out of fear. I mean, every interaction you have is some level of fear, right? Someone's mad at you at the grocery store, there's fear behind that.
Yeah,
Like
true story.
everything that happens is fear-based. But there's resilience in our capacity to overcome when we want to, when we choose to, when we're given the opportunity to. So I don't feel like it's a hopeless feeling. Like
Yeah.
it makes me sad that we're all fearful, but I'm hopeful because of the resilience. And I do think that even if you don't have innate resilience, it's something that you can learn. And it's
Mm,
something, but you need exposure. You need somebody that wants to pour into you and kind of guide you through that, you know? So,
powerful.
yeah.
Powerful. All right. So I'm curious, what's a word, phrase, memory, or moment that has stuck with you personally or professionally?
You want me to tell you? I'm going to tell you, but it's your words.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I ain't mad.
You, because I appropriated them,
Oh,
And I told you I've always given you credit for them. Um, Two things I'll probably say. Ask for one, I'm gonna give you two.
I'm
One
okay
one
with that.
makes me laugh, because I always when I think of it, I think of you and it makes me laugh and I use it with the students. But it's like whenever something big is about to happen or you're gonna say something that's gonna really get a crowd or a group you're talking to or the students, it's like, I'm gonna hit you upside the head with a honey bun right about now, you know? And
Let's go. Let's go.
And I love that one. I love that one. But it was probably the 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 = 5, and how I've morphed that into, my lessons. My one time when I had to speak out against, a policy I wasn't happy with, I used that phrase and it got quoted in newspapers. And, I gave you credit for it because it's your words, but it was so powerful to me. And how I conceptualize in my classes, like, look around, everyone's operating from a 2 + 2 = 5, which is a belief, not a fact.
Mhm,
But they think
absolutely.
everything that they believe is a fact. And what if your way isn't right and their way isn't right? What if, and it just, I think what's so powerful about that is it brings us together. And I'm a bridge builder. So, I like anything that brings people together,
I mean, your name is Bridget. I mean, come on, like
I know, I
bridge, but come
know.
on, like, come on. It's part of who you are. You
Yeah,
are a bridge builder. You are
I
a
am.
connector. You
Yeah.
are, and I'm glad you see that. I'm glad you see
I
that.
do. I learned that from the at Monmouth University when we had the NJCA. It was the play therapy, cultural therapy right before the pandemic, and we did a thing where you had to go pick what you were and go stand in that group. And it was like, I don't know if it was system disruptors, but, like, of course, like, everybody goes over there, like, we're going to disrupt the system. And I picked bridge building, and everyone's like, no, you
Mm,
belong over here. You disrupt the system. And I said, I know you see that, but, like, I'm actually a bridge builder. Like, that's what
yeah,
I do. I want to
yeah.
bring the sides together,
Mhm.
So yeah,
Absolutely. And you're
yeah.
doing it and have done it. And I love it. I love it. All
Yeah.
right. So, last two.
Okay.
An interesting fact about yourself, and because I want you to get some time to process this. So,
Yeah.
interesting fact about yourself. And then last is life work. We don't give homework on this podcast. We give life work. Homework, you take it home, you do it, you forget about it. Life work, you take it home, you do it, you change. So, if you can
Yeah.
offer some life work to the audience, a keepsake, or anything you want to share to the listeners to challenge them, to charge them to do something, what would that be? So, two
Okay.
questions loaded.
Okay. Interesting fact about me. When I was younger, I actually went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and wanted to be an actress, and did some auditions in the city and really found a passion with that. But interestingly enough, I stopped myself because of fear.
Wow.
Interesting fact. Yep.
I didn't know you was gonna drop a bomb like that.
Just saying. It's what happened. It's what happened.
Well, it's never too
Um,
late. It's
No,
never
it's
too
never
late.
too late, and I'm actually yeah.
Ooh, let's go.
I've been thinking about doing some community theater just to get back into those creative juices, which are, a separate modality than everything else that, I'm doing. And yeah, I'm definitely toying with the idea. I've been looking where there's, like, local places around. So I'm open to it. I'm definitely open to it. And I don't regret anything. It's part of the journey, but I do recognize, because you cannot move forward and be your authentic self if you can't really look at your truth and be honest about the choices you made and the reason why. And I do recognize that I'd often said, well, I stopped doing it because, I was going to get pregnant with my son at the time. And that's just part of the truth. That's not the whole truth. The truth is I stopped it because I was scared. And I really don't ever tell anybody that. So here we
Mm.
go. Got
Yeah,
it. Just gave you an
it's
honest
here
moment.
now. And fear, oh my God, fear. I mean, you just providing evidence. You're just doing these facts. You're providing
Yeah.
facts that goes behind this idea of the big lie. And
Hmm.
it connects, fear is the big lie because
Yeah.
fear is louder than the facts.
Oh, it sure is. And it
Ooh.
was, and it stopped me in my tracks. But, you know, I'm aware now. I wasn't aware then, right? So
Mm.
so that's a good segue into what I would want to give as life work, right?
Hey.
Um, Only change can happen if you become aware of the reasons why you're doing things. So I would challenge everyone to change the lens through which they're looking at themselves and the world around them. Awareness is the key. The minute I became aware, I couldn't unsee it. When I'm doing it now, I'm like, oh shit, I'm doing it now. Right? Like, you can't not see it once you change the awareness. When we don't have awareness, you're just going through life, right? You're like in the matrix. That's what it's like. You're in the matrix and you're plugged in and everything seems okay and it's great, but you're given the opportunity to take the pill that can bring you out of the matrix, right? And it can give you the awareness, and you're scared to do it. But once you're aware, it's real. It's not this facade. You're not just going through the motions. So I would say the life work would be, if you want real connection, real feeling, real love, real joy, real happiness, real, you got to get aware. Get aware and change that lens. That's the life work.
Listeners, y'all just officially got hit in the head with a honey bun. Yes,
Heck
by
yeah.
Briget Nunn.
Heck
Y'all
yeah.
got hit in the head with a honey bun. So thank you so much for your story, for your truth, for your authenticity, for your integrity, for your journey, for those 3 parallels. I really appreciate you so much for just making yourself available to do this. And there's so many people that's listening, students, faculty, professionals, so many different people that you've been able to impact and inspire directly and indirectly. And it doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop here. This is one episode, this is one show. For the listeners, how can they get in contact with you? How can they connect with you? Say, for instance, somebody wants to work with you, they want to pick your
Yeah.
brain, they want to take you to lunch, whatever.
Yeah.
How can they get in contact with you?
Well, they can email me. You want to give me I'll give you my email
Yes,
address.
please.
Okay. I'll just give you can email me at briget8276@gmail.com. And I will certainly answer any emails that you send me and be happy to connect with anyone in the field or anyone that just wants to reach out. I believe what we need to do is be true helpers in the helping profession, right? Not just say it's a helping profession. So I'm here, I'm accessible, and I so appreciate you. This has been awesome. I
Good.
just I love our conversations, and I'm proud of you. You're creating this platform for yourself. You're living your authentic life, and I appreciate you. And this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So usually I end the show giving you love. You gave me the love. And I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it. I
You
accept my
should.
flowers, and I want to give you
Absolutely.
your flowers, Bridget. You are phenomenal. You are amazing. You are a gift. You are a gem, not just to me, but to everyone who's ever crossed your path in any time in life. I'm proud of you. I'm
Mm.
impressed by you. I appreciate you, and I love you. Thank
Oh,
you.
oh, thank you. I love you too, my friend. You are amazing.
Yes, yes.
I'm receiving it. I'm receiving it. That just felt so good, right? That felt so,
That's
there's my evidence that I am more than enough.
all day.
All
All
day.
day.
All day.
Much love. Thank you so much for being on the show. To the listeners, I hope you got your notes. I hope you took notes. I hope you paid attention to what was said. I hope you paid attention to the journey, the story, the 3 parallels. Connect the dots, not just the ones you like, all of them.
Oh, okay.
Don't keep this information to yourself. Share it, like it, comment, give it away. Do not keep this insight, this info. Share it with other people because you never know how you can impact somebody else by you sharing your truth. Much love. I will see you all next time.
Feeling overwhelmed? Searching for someone who truly gets it? At J. Branch and Associates, we provide mental health support for BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and others facing unique challenges. We understand the weight of generational trauma, the struggles of identity, and the pressures of being a part of an underestimated and overlooked group. At J. Branch and Associates, therapy isn't a one-size-fits-all. We create a safe, culturally aware space where you can feel seen, heard, and understood. Finding a therapist who truly fits you matters, and that's exactly what we're here for. Our team of highly trained licensed therapists bring compassion, empathy, and real-world experience to help you on your journey to healing and growth. We're committed to helping you become the best version of yourself. Ready to take the next step? Visit us at www.drjbranch.com for more information, or call or text 404-436-2540 to schedule your free 15-minute consultation. You can also book your first session today. Thank you for choosing J. Branch and Associates, therapists of color providing exceptional care to BIPOC communities, quality service, exceptional care from authentic professionals.